Jimmy, I've had about just enough.
Oh,
we're
sorry.
back. Hang on. Put that back.
Welcome back to the show. Today we're here talking about conflict with Roy Johnson.
We're back.
Roy. So,
Doesn't
how
that
are
feel
you
cathartic?
feeling? Yes, exactly.
That little challenger thing led to some more intensity there.
So, okay, this brings up some interesting feelings for me. So when you were standing there with the candle, I was feeling really intimidated, and it's like, oh my gosh. So what I'd like to know is what goes on for the challenger? So what goes on for the person that's pushing back and being really aggressive? Like, why do they do what they do? What sort of thought process is going on for them?
Have you been to a casino?
Yes, I
So you
have.
walk in, what do you see?
What do I see? I see lots of people on the machines. Sometimes the same people I saw the morning before.
And what
yes.
about the physical environment do you notice? What does the physical environment look like?
Smoky, muggly, glum.
Which casino have you been to? Because what casinos try and do, despite all the smoky glumness, I think you're reading more of the emotional climate.
True enough.
Because when you walk in, they try and have lights and
Oh,
lots
yes,
of...
the
It feels
sun,
like
no.
a game and celebration. There are people that walk around with trays of drinks,
Very
free
true.
drinks for you. And I always say that what they're trying to establish in a casino is they're trying to make you feel like you're winning, even though you
Very
keep
true.
plugging the machines with the very rare small wins.
Yeah.
Gambling is winning, or is losing, that feels like winning. And when you say what's going on for the challenger, it's like a casino. It feels like winning. Even though underneath it, as I just demonstrated, when I'm oppressing somebody and they're coiling up, it's only a matter of time before I'm on the losing side, or even if I do win the little battle, they pop off and go somewhere else, their needs not being met. At the end of it, it's just not sustainable. So it's addictive for folks, and we're talking about bullying behavior, folks who are just so used to being high competitive, I don't care about your needs.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So, how, do they understand the other person's feelings, do you think? Do
They
think
don't care.
They don't care.
Well, I mean, there are exceptions, of course. Out at the office that I work with, we run an executive coaching program.
Yeah.
And about a quarter of folks who are in that program don't call us. We call them. We call it Bully Charm School around the office. We are bully rehab specialists.
Okay. So
And,
bully is the term.
Bullying is the term.
Bullying is
But that being said, after 15 years of doing this, I've never had somebody sit down across from me and go, Roy, I'm a bully. I need help. Bullying is always something that somebody else is doing.
Absolutely.
And one of the reasons why I may be successful in working with them is, frankly, I can be plenty bullying myself, as you experienced over the break. And what's happening with bullying, I'm just going to use these guys here.
Yes.
So with bullying, and if we use that same metaphor of me pushing and you
Yes.
pushing and that kind of thing, with a bully, they're so used to pushing like this that if this person doesn't push back at all, they'll just stay in this position. And you have workplaces where people can function like this for quite a long time,
Yes.
except that this poor person's spending all this time trying to get away, right?
Yes.
By the time you actually do push back, here's the interesting thing with bullies, is that it pushes it back into equilibrium because the bully very seldom will allow themselves to get into that position in the first place.
Okay.
And this is what's very confusing for people who are targeted by bullying behavior. They think the best strategy is to just try and work around them and be nice and please the bully. That is how you
Yeah.
paint a big target on your forehead and become the subject of the bully's wrath.
Wow.
Really, the best way to deal with a bully, well, there's two strategies. One is to bring out a bigger bully, like this guy's boss, who
Okay.
sits very close to the bully and keeps an eye on him.
Yeah.
The second strategy is to develop the skills, and we're talking assertion skills, to be able to effectively push back.
So what is assertion? What does that mean?
You haven't noticed in talking with me so far?
Was that aggression or assertion?
That was passive aggression, actually. Do you know the definition of a passive aggressive?
I've experienced it, and but I don't know if I could define it. But I know how I felt with passive. Like I'm definitely the person that would avoid that passive aggressive behavior and just. Yeah.
And passive aggression does involve a piece of a wins. How many
Yes.
passive aggressives does it take to screw in a light bulb?
I don't know.
None, that's fine. I'll just sit here in the dark. That's passive aggression. So whether it's passive aggressive type of behavior or full-on bullying behavior, when we're talking about assertion, we're talking about the skill of putting my needs on the table.
Okay.
An effective assertion means not pushing your needs off while I'm doing that. There's a segue to look at what I just pushed off the table. Let me subtle.
Yes.
So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the skill of assertion.
Okay. So can people, like, say, if we look at assertion, are people naturally assertive, or can you learn to be assertive?
It's a skill.
It's a skill.
And it's a skill that plays into a style. So my style might be more naturally, I was either through my culture or a combination of my family environment, and there is some evidence about genetic pieces of this in our personalities, that I'm predisposed to be a bit more avoiding, accommodating. It's easier for me to lean away. It is more difficult for me to cultivate the assertion skills. Similarly, if I tend to be very outspoken, very assertive person, I tend to end up in more competitive approaches, charging into conflict. It's very difficult for me to learn what we refer to as impulse control. That's the difference between having the feeling and becoming the feeling.
Very true, very true. So now, about the book. Turning conflict into profit. Come on. Conflict into profit. Tell me about this.
I profited quite well off of conflict, but we picked the title to appeal. This is by my colleague and I, Larry Axelrod, and myself. We picked the title Turning Conflict into Profit because if you look out there in bookshelves around the subject material, there's a lot of books that by the time you're reaching for them, you're already kind of preaching to the converted about how conflict can be so difficult and why it's important to resolve conflict. Bullying books, there's lots of great books exploring bullying and what's going on there. Very little of the other books out there describe what do we do with it. And we wanted to provide in one location essentially a collection of different theories, different approaches that do advance strategies for what do you do with it. So while there's some original thought in the book, it's also heavily referenced, drawing on a number of models. I understand your next guest, Gary Harper, we have some pieces in there that are models that he works with as well. And also pulling that together in our own model, which is essentially based on what I've been describing as what's involved in leaning in.
What I really love about this book is that the whole idea and the premise of Winds of Change is that it celebrates the possibilities. And even in myself, I think when I think about all the stuff that goes on around me in my personal life, I love to look at what is there to celebrate. And that's what I love about this book, is it really shows you how to celebrate conflict. And that's really important, because I think that, as you said earlier in the segment, that it's inevitable. Conflict is all around us. And so I think embracing it and finding different ways of dealing with it is so critical. And it ties in really nicely to communication, right? Like, communication, I find, is the essence of everything that we do. Everything changes based on how we communicate. And so finding ways of dealing with conflict is so critical.
Yes, and Jeevee, your whole philosophy around celebrating the possibilities is exciting and motivating. It's a very glass half full approach to what those possibilities could mean. What we look at with conflict is a little bit, it's the same thing on the other side of the coin. It's about, if we're celebrating the possibilities, we're also not exactly sure if those possibilities are going to pan out. We're not exactly sure what might happen if I risk this change. And part of what we're doing with conflict is a bit of a safety net to celebrate the possibilities. What am I going to do if things go sideways? What happens if she says this? What happens if I try and do this and that happens? We're also about covering off risk in celebrating possibilities. So it's like another layer there that can give us more confidence in being open to change and being open to seize those possibilities by boosting the skills for what if.
Absolutely. I think if I recall the first time I met you, you were presenting to a large audience, and during that you were talking about the risk and the impact and the perception, and you closed your presentation by saying, if you can remember 3 words out of anything I said, remember these 3 words. And